It began, as always, with the desire for power.
The most powerful console ever made.
The need to conquer, the hunger to consume.
The thing this is really about is a huge investment in our Xbox community.
Inevitably, this led to conflict.
Why is it that we have 38-year-old men going to war with each other over which bootleg PC is better? How is this our reality?
Humanity fought an endless battle against itself until it was forced to unite against a power far greater than it had ever known.
Do you guys not have phones?
Yeah, you guys all have phones, right?
But even united, humanity left only destruction in its wake.
I wasn't planning on making a retrospective for the other games in the Gears of War trilogy, but after playing through Gears of War 1 and making the retrospective on that game, I decided why not just go through the entire trilogy and play all of them again. So I fired up the Xbox 360, popped in Gears of War 2, and I had an absolute blast playing through it again. When I finish a game, I usually go to YouTube and I watch as much as I can to learn more about the game. And in typical fashion, I was able to find a lot of retrospectives that talk about the story and the development and the release of the game. But again, I couldn't really find any videos that really discussed the details about the multiplayer and why it was so amazing. There's a reason that people say that Gears of War 2 has the best multiplayer. So in this video, I'm going to be covering the development history and the release of Gears of War 2. I'll talk about the amazingly emotional story, and we're going to dive into all of the details about the multiplayer. Let's take it back a bit. Gears of War 1 released on November 7th of 2006. It was a commercial and critical success, selling 2 million copies in the first 3 months. It was the definition of a system seller for the Xbox 360. It helped fuel an explosive growth of subscribers for Xbox Live. Sniper montages were all over YouTube. Game battles and MLG were popping off, and Gears of War was on the center stage at the 2007 MLG Championships in Las Vegas. Gears of War was everywhere. Little did we know that Gears of War 2 was already in development and it would be released right around the corner. It was developed on a budget of only $12 million, and let's just take a moment to compare that to the budgets of today's games. For reference, Halo Infinite reportedly cost about $500 million to make, and we all know how that turned out.
What is wrong with your face?
Gears of War 2 was announced at GDC in February of 2008. In a way that only Gears of War could pull off, Cliff Bleszinski burst onto the stage wielding a replica of the Lancer to announce that
Gears 2 is going to be bigger, better, and far more badass than the first game in every way.
Gears of War 2 was released on November 7th of 2008, exactly 2 years after the release of Gears of War. It sold over 2 million copies in the first week alone and passed 4 million units sold after only 2 months. It set a new record by having over 1 million players playing it simultaneously on Xbox Live, beating out Halo 3's record for a concurrent player count.
Let's do this.
You'll immediately notice the graphical improvements that have been made between games. Gears of War 2 uses a modified version of Unreal Engine 3, designed to show off the new physics and lighting capabilities. Remember, Epic Games wasn't just selling Gears of War to players. They were also selling Unreal Engine's capabilities to developers. Where the first game was very dark and textures were limited, the sequel sports a lighter tone with improved lighting, textures, and physics. Characters are more visible and they stand out against the environment. Character models are also less jagged and they feel a lot more lifelike. For the gameplay, improvements were made to the combat to help beef up the over-the-top action. As shown in the GDC PC trailer, you can now enter into chainsaw duels, with both players furiously mashing the B button to try to survive. They also added in all new weapon-specific executions. Cover and projectile mechanics were also changed to help provide a better flow to combat, and the story campaign ditched the underbaked squad ordering system and improved the squad AI. Now players can also use the down but not out system and can be picked up by AI squad mates rather than dying immediately. New weapons were introduced. Some of them are really welcome additions, like the new heavy weapons, the mortar, the mulcher, and the boom shield. Also introduced were the Scorcher, a short-range flamethrower, the ink grenade, a poison cloud grenade, and the burst fire Gorgon pistol. Changes were also made to some of the existing weapons. The Lancer and Hammerburst now employ projectile mechanics, meaning you have to lead your shots in order for them to hit the target. The Hammerburst was also changed to a semi-automatic rifle, completely ignoring the burst part of its name, but I guess hammer semi-automatic just doesn't roll off the tongue. It's fine, I guess. At least they won't change it in future games.
You stupid.
The Locust forces, as we know them, are now reinforced by new enemy types. Tickers are quick-moving, exploding bugs, and I thought the Lambent Wretches were annoying. Blood Mounts are horrifying abominations ridden by the new Beast Riders. There are now Flame Grenadiers that burst onto the scene wielding the new Scorcher flamethrower, but these guys are easily dispatched if you just shoot the tank on their back to ignite and detonate the fuel. 3 new Boomer variants are added to crash the party. We have Grinders, Maulers, and Butchers. And the most unique new enemy is the Cantus. These priests for the Locust are capable of reviving downed Locust. In Gears of War 2, we don't see a return of the Krill, thank God. The Lambent Wretches get back in their hole, and it seems like Epic blew their load with Berserkers in the first game, and they're now in a refractory period for Gears of War 2. There are some other changes, but the impact for those is mostly felt in the multiplayer, so we'll save those for later in the video. The story for Gears of War 2 is an absolute roller coaster, full of high-octane action moments and incredible set pieces. To beef up the story, the team brought on Joshua Ortega. Known for his sci-fi novels, Ortega would bring a more human connection element to the story. Gears of War 2 has some incredibly emotional moments. Set 6 months after Delta Squad eliminated General Rom and escorted the light mass bomb to detonate in the Emulsion Lake, Gears of War 2 picks up with the COG army on their last leg. The locusts that survived are stronger than ever and have begun sinking entire cities. Humanity's last refuge is the city of Jacinto. Prescott, chairman of the Coalition of Ordered Governments, rallies all COG forces to Jacinto to prepare for an all-out assault on the Locust Hollow. The game opens up with Marcus, Dom, and Anya at Jacinto's hospital. Immediately, we're given a recruit as the new member of Delta Squad, Benjamin Carmine.
Reporting for duty, sir!
And right off the bat, you're presented with your first path option, a series staple. You can either choose to train Ben, or you can push on with the rest of the force. And I can't believe this has to be said, but more modern games need this feature that was in place over 15 years ago. It always strikes me as a little odd that Dom and Marcus don't acknowledge that they knew Anthony Carmine. Sure, they didn't know him for very long, but they were standing right next to him when his weapon jammed. Okay, so I spent an hour looking for one specific line of dialogue that I forgot to write a timestamp for. Turns out that there's actually specific dialogue inside the training. If you do choose to go through the tutorial, Dom does mention that he knew Anthony. As the hospital comes under attack, we find Ben Carmine cowering inside. They set up a running joke that Ben still hasn't learned how to reload his weapon.
Reloading, sir! I still don't have that trick down.
A simple callback to Anthony's final moments and a reminder that Ben is just a kid compared to the war-hardened Marcus and Dom. During this mission, we're introduced to one of the 2 new characters for the COG, Ty Caliso.
Everything happens for a reason.
After repelling the Locust forces, Anya gives Dom some bad news about a lead on a missing person that Dom is looking for. You see, all the way back in Act 2 of the first game, Dom mentions that he's looking for someone. In Gears of War 1, there's not much backstory given for Dom or any of the characters, and this line was one that you could easily miss. So now in the sequel, we're finally learning that Dom has been looking for his wife. Dom loses his temper at the news, smashing a car window and showing the first real signs of emotion in the Gears of War story up until this point. Delta then listens to Chairman Prescott's rallying speech as the COG army prepares for its final assault on the Locust Hollow. The plan is simple. The COG will drive massive assault derricks to a position above the Locust Hollows, then hop into grind lifts that will drill down to deploy the troops inside the hollows. Delta Squad rides on the rig of the other new COG character, Dizzy.
Oh yeah, her name is Dizzy.
Portrayed as a hillbilly mechanic sporting a cowboy hat and a thick draw to boot, Dizzy is an everyman that joined the COG army to make sure he could have the medicine needed for his daughter. The big push to get to the drop point is littered with cedars, brumocks, reavers, and corpsers. It's a stark contrast to the first game. The first Gears of War was a simple, intimate experience with lots of tight corridors and only glimpses or mentions of the larger Locust threat, other than the one fight against the Corpser. In Gears of War 2, all of that subtlety is thrown out the window. Delta fights through until they reach the town of Landown. Ty's derrick is destroyed by a swarm of tickers, but Ty manages to emerge from the wreckage unscathed.
Marcus, is that Ty?
Yeah, told you he was tough to kill.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
From this one subtle line, we are given so much for our minds to embrace about Ty. If Marcus, of all people, thinks Ty is pretty tough to kill, then you better damn well believe it. Ty is a symbol of hope for the COG, an inspiration for all the soldiers fighting a losing war. On the way to the drop point, Delta has to get through a dark tunnel with Dizzy's derrick lighting the way.
Let me light up here.
And as the army reaches the drop point, they are attacked by a Locust force led by the new villain, Scourge. Scourge wields a quarterstaff with chainsaws on either end. In contrast with the other Locusts that we've seen up to this point, Scourge is slender and he moves very quickly. It's clear from first glance that he's a different type of threat. Dizzy and Ty fight off Scourge to make sure that the deployment goes to plan, and Delta watches helplessly as they descend into the hollows.
Ah, fuck!
This is the first time the COG have supposedly seen the inside of the Locust tunnels, and to no one's surprise, Ben gets separated from Marcus and Dom. Over the comms, we hear Ben assisting Alpha Squad as they are decimated by a Locust force.
Sir, we're under attack! Locusts are everywhere! Shit!
Marcus and Dom show up to save Ben, and the three push further into the hollow towards the target. Dom throws a little shade at Ben as they head through some dust.
If you wore a helmet, then you wouldn't have to breathe in the dust.
Yeah, but I wouldn't see snipers so often, would I?
And on the way, they see a massive riftworm burrowing through the earth and finally learn how the Locusts are sinking cities. And with this one shot, we as the player learn just how outmatched humanity is against the Locust threat. Delta Squad gets caught in an ambush, but Cole shows up to save the day, and the team pushes on to find Baird trapped in a metal contraption. As it turns out, the Locusts are taking prisoners and torturing them. So Delta heads onto the beast barges to save any captured gears. Here we find Ty, captured, tortured, and beaten nearly beyond recognition. Marcus hands Ty a shotgun and issues orders to the squad only for, well,
No!
I'm not a big lore head. I've never read any of the novels or the comic books or really watched many of the lore videos that are out there for Gears of War. I always felt like the original trilogy told what it needed to during the game, but while working on the script, I found this video about Ty by King Abs, and it references some comic panels. One part in particular stood out to me. In the comic, there's an explanation of how Ty was captured and what happened to him after. In the narration panels, Ty says, "My grandfather once told me that a soul will leave its body when it is time, not always at death. And once the soul is gone, the body will follow soon after."
I told you they're breaking people! I can hear them screaming from the docks!
I can't believe they did that to Ty. He survives everything.
So far.
Delta pushes on to save some more survivors, and a King Raven comes to pick them up, but it gets hit by some falling debris. Carmine falls out, and the King Raven is swallowed by a riftworm. Delta wakes up in the belly of the riftworm and decides that they're gonna cut the heart to kill it from the inside. So they make their way through and they find Carmine is being attacked by some creatures.
Get off me! Get the hell off me! Sarge.
Carmine.
I hurt, Sarge. Tell my brothers and my mom. Tell them I love them.
Oh, no.
Delta cuts the riftworm's arteries and it dies from the inside, with Delta bathing in a pool of its blood.
I thought they smelled bad on the outside.
Delta is then sent to a classified research facility where they are experimenting on people that have rust lung. There's not much story that happens here, it's mostly a setup for lore purposes and for the sequel. The research base is protected by an AI of the lead scientist. Delta discovers that there are tanks holding unrecognizable creatures. On a terminal, they find that the researchers left to travel to Mount Kadar and left behind the sires, the test subjects, to protect them for future research. So Delta heads off to Mount Kadar and we get an awful tank sequence. So you cross the frozen lakes and you make your way up the mountain. Entering the mountain, Delta Squad drives through the dark caves when suddenly they fall and they lose power, and we get an actually terrifying scene as the glowing eyes of multiple corpses appear through the darkness.
Are you crazy, Marcus?
Oh, shit! We're not gonna make it!
Here we go!
Inside Mount Kadar, Delta finds a group of stranded led by Chap from Chap's gas station in the first game. Chap points the squad towards the Locust Nexus across the lake. Marcus orders Cole and Baird to escort the stranded to the surface while Marcus and Dom push on to the Nexus stronghold to signal for reinforcements. Dom asks Chap if he's seen Maria and he says he might have seen her and tells them to check out the work camps that are on their way to Nexus. Dom and Marcus cross the lake on a broken piece of pier before stealing a Locust gunboat, and along the way they're being followed by a massive creature in the lake that frightens even the Locust. In a strangely slapstick moment, their gunboat goes off of a waterfall, and after somehow surviving the fall of over 200 feet, the Leviathan attacks their gunboat. They fight off the monster by shooting it in the eyes, then throw grenades down its throat.
Biggest fish I've ever caught.
After crossing the lake, Dom and Marcus arrive at the Locust Nexus. Instead of heading straight for the stronghold to activate the beacon and call in reinforcements, Dom convinces Marcus to divert over to the work camps to see if they can find Maria.
This is it, Dom. This is everything we've been fighting for.
Yeah? Well, Maria's everything I've been fighting for. She's my fucking wife, all right?
Ah, hell. Dom, wait up.
At this point, we get our first look at the Locust stronghold, and we see a very detailed environment full of ornate decorations lining the walls and the architecture. I'm not sure if this was intentional, but I like to think that the Locust stronghold was inspired by H.R. Geiger. Dom and Marcus find Maria trapped in one of those metal containers from earlier, and we get what is one of the most emotionally powerful cutscenes in all of gaming.
We finally found her! Maria. Maria.
Dom.
No. No, baby. No. What did they do to you? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Maria. I tried to find you. God, I did. Please, no. Maria. God damn it, it's me, Dominic. It's Dominic. Marcus, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do, man.
No. It's okay.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Maria. I love you so much.
I played Gears of War 2 for the first time when I was about 14 years old, and I can remember this cutscene being really sad. But now that I'm replaying this at 30 years old and I have a wife and a daughter, I honestly teared up when I watched this cutscene. It's not just that Dom makes the hardest decision that could possibly be made to free Maria from her pain. It's this part right here, when Dom looks back at Marcus and says,
Marcus, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do, man.
No. It's okay.
This line is written and delivered so perfectly. It perfectly captures that feeling of paralysis and uncertainty that comes from even imagining something bad happening to a loved one. Marcus can't tell Dom what to do. No one can. Marcus can only tell him that it's okay to do the unthinkable.
There's nothing darker than a man finding his significant other completely incapacitated and then having to do the only thing he can. And it's really heavy stuff. And then watching the scene to this day still gives me chills.
Well, and it's interesting because as we shoot this, we have no idea what really everyone's reaction is going to be to it. And I think that's going to be really interesting to see because I know it's going to be something that's going to be talked about. It's not something you see, hell, even in any media very often, especially visual media, let alone a game.
And Dom doesn't have the luxury of time to make his decision. He has to make his choice, then immediately push on to war with the Locust.
I'm sorry about Maria, but she's in a better place now. You did what you had to do. I found a way to sneak into Nexus, but if you want to go in guns blazing, I don't blame you.
I want to kill them all.
So here is where there's actually some cut content that was later added back into the game. The developers originally intended for the player to have the option to sneak in wearing Theron Guard armor or to go in guns blazing. Thankfully, someone on the team realized that Dom would want nothing more than revenge after what he had just been through. The scene of Marcus and Dom sneaking in wearing the Theron Guard armor was added as a separate paid DLC. Going in guns blazing, Marcus and Dom push on to find the Palace of the Locust Nexus. They fight through the Locust forces to activate the beacon and to call in reinforcements and meet up with Baird and Cole. They make their way over to the palace where they find the Locust forces are engaged in a heavy firefight, but it doesn't appear to be against COG troops. We don't get a very good look at who the locusts are fighting against, as the squad decides to push on to the next objective. After clearing out a squad of locusts, they investigate a dead body in the room and they discover that the locusts are at war against the Lambent. Delta makes their way onto a platform to descend further into the palace when suddenly a group of Lambent come running after them. A grenadier jumps onto the platform and is killed in midair, and we see that the glowing force leaves its body and travels back up to the Lambent on the ledge.
Foreshadowing is a narrative device.
Delta reaches the communications room where the Queen is broadcasting her message to the Locust troops. Cole grabs the microphone and goes ballistic.
The world is rightfully ours!
Delta Squad is in your house, bitch! You hear that shit? Your grubby ass bitches are going down! Like way down! Dead down! So down you ain't gonna even know which way is up! Your ass is gonna be quiet till your skink ass queen! Oh, mommy, you let the bad man hurt us! Fuck you! We gonna whoop your mama's ass! Whoa!
Delta then discovers a log from Marcus's father, Adam Phoenix. In the log, he's saying that if they sink Jacinto, it will flood the hollow and it will wipe out the locust. So the plan is now changed to wanting to sink Jacinto. Delta fights on and pushes into the throne room where they find Queen Mira, who is human? This shocked me and everyone else at the time. I can remember talking to my friends about this online or in school. All we've seen of the locust up until this point are disgusting monstrosities. To have the queen be what appears to be human, well, that just blew our minds. Somehow, the queen knows who Marcus and Adam Phoenix are and says that she has an army on the way to Jacinto to prevent it from being flooded before the locust can evacuate the tunnels. She then sicks Scourge on Marcus and Dom and then leaves.
It no longer matters. Scourge, destroy them.
Wait, aren't you even gonna watch them? They could get away.
No. I'm going to leave them alone and not actually witness them dying. I'm just going to assume it all went to plan. What?
Then begins one of the most humdrum boss fights you could imagine. Scourge jumps off to the sides of the arena to cut down the pillars, then makes stalactites fall from the ceiling. Some tickers crash the party, and Marcus chainsaw duels with Scourge 3 times before Scourge escapes by jumping onto a Hydra, a mutated variant of a Reaver. Delta hops onto a Reaver of their own to get back to Jacinto and to stop the Locust army. There's an on-rails shooter sequence that I think goes pretty underappreciated. This is the first time we get a good picture of the scale of the Locust Hollows as we fight off the Brumox and help save some gears. It doesn't help that that scene is followed up by an awfully repetitive sequence fighting off other Reavers and then fighting off Scourge's Hydra. The Hydra grabs your Reaver so you can shoot its arm. It flies in front of you. You shoot a rocket into its face. Then it flies behind you and fires rockets at you that you have to dodge.
Dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge.
Rinse and repeat, and the Hydra dies. And as it crashes, Scourge is flung off and dies. Scourge has so much wasted potential. I mean, damn, he broke Ty Kaliso and he rides a Rift Worm. With Scourge taken care of, Delta makes their way over to Jacinto. Jacinto's command comes under attack by the Locust and the Reavers. Colonel Hoffman joins up with Delta to help defend it.
Control! We're gonna need air support here ASAP!
Sorry, Colonel. Nothing's available right now. All Ravens are now evacuating citizens or prepping for the bomb drop.
Hey, Colonel. I guess we are the support, huh?
I understood that reference.
They defend against the wave of Locust and return to command to learn that the plan is now to detonate another light mass bomb near the Locust sinkhole. Delta is tasked with clearing the target area. Baird and Cole are sent to deal with the light mass bomb, while for some reason Marcus and Dom go off on their own to clear the area.
What? Why?
Marcus and Dom fight through some courtyards and some city streets when Anya informs them that the Hammer of Dawn satellites are online and overhead. After about 5.5 hours of playing through this game, I had completely forgotten about the Hammer of Dawn. Marcus and Dom arrive at the sinkhole and descend the destroyed buildings. This section has some really cool stuff going on. There's lots of wreckage from collapsed buildings, and they have to use the environment to help them navigate. You could really tell that Epic is trying to sell Unreal Engine 3 here. There's this section where you have to use the crane to create a platform to move your partner over to the other side. Now, I swear this happened, but I forgot to record this section of the game. Dom completely forgot what was happening and just refused to get onto the platform while I was operating the crane. I had to reload about 4 different times before he finally woke up. At a certain point, they realized that they need to create a bridge to cross over to another building, so they chainsaw some wires and that causes this platform to fall and create a bridge. The bridge collapses while they're crossing it, and somehow they survive the 100-foot fall. Through the dust and smoke, they wake up and then they push on until the building they are in is demolished by a Brumok.
Shit, not again!
They escape using an elevator on its side, which begs the question, how the hell does this elevator have power? Then they decide that they're gonna ride on a Brumok. And just like that, the Gears of War franchise has officially jumped the shark.
Control, Delta here. We've hijacked the Brumok so that we can...
What?
We're riding a Brumok. We're gonna use it to clear the area faster.
Okay. Roger that, Delta. Keep us posted. Control out.
And this is our big action figure moment. It even wrestles against the Corpser in a moment that's ripped right out of a Godzilla or King Kong movie. And there is no way you could play this section without having a giant smile on your face. The Brumok pushes into a cavern and destroys 3 columns to collapse the ceiling and give a path for Baird and the Ravens to bring the bomb to the target site. But the Brumok steps into the emulsion and it becomes enraged. It hits the Raven that's carrying the bomb and the bomb falls into the emulsion. The Brumok becomes lambent. So Marcus figures out that the Brumok will explode after they kill it, and
then I think we've got our bomb.
And you proceed to fly around the abomination, firing the Hammer of Dawn at it to kill it. I have a feeling that the developers were really big fans of John Carpenter's 1982 cult classic film, The Thing. The design of the lambent Brumok is very reminiscent of The Thing after it transforms. This is pretty much exactly the same as the final boss fight from the PC game of The Thing.
Fuck you too!
So the Brumok is killed, the King Ravens escape before it explodes, and Jacinto sinks. Water rushes in and it floods the hollow. But just as everything feels like it's going to be okay, the voice of the Locust Queen once again cuts in with a voiceover to remind us that the war is far from over.
Your world can end in the blink of an eye. One event, one unexpected twist of fate, and suddenly the world as you knew it is gone forever.
Anya, can you read me? Anya, come in! Anya!
All that you held dear, all that you held close, is washed away into the sea of distant memory.
I'm sorry, Marcus.
Life is cruel. Of this, I have no doubt. But life continues on, with or without you. One can only hope that one leaves behind a lasting legacy. But so often, the legacies that we leave behind are not the ones that we intended.
Wow. I don't remember the story campaign being that good, the action set pieces are an absolute blast. The new enemies are engaging and they add much needed variety. The characters actually display emotion, and the story really pulls at your heartstrings while also making you feel like an absolute unit. It might not end on a full-fledged cliffhanger, but it leaves you wanting more. The COG achieved a Pyrrhic victory, losing thousands of gears, an unknown amount of equipment, and their final stronghold of Jacinto. Beaten and broken, they now face an enemy capable of threatening even the Locust. Despite the overwhelming loss of family, friends, and hope, they must gather their strength and prepare for yet another war, losing everything you cherish in the blink of an eye, yet finding the resolve to push forward and face the next challenge. That, to me, is what Gears of War 2's story is all about. The story wasn't the only thing to receive major improvements. The multiplayer was also fleshed out beyond our wildest imaginations. Before I get into all of the changes, it's important to remember that the first Gears of War's multiplayer was thrown together in only about 6 months. With a far greater amount of time to spend on the multiplayer, the team had plenty of opportunity to deliver on an improved experience, and boy did they deliver. The first major change was the introduction of a new mode, Horde. In this PvE mode, players team up to survive against 50 waves of increasingly difficult Locust hordes. As the waves progress, more and more enemies spawn with increased health and damage. To spice things up, bosses such as Bloodmounts, Boomers, Grinders, and Maulers spawn every 10th wave. Surviving the 50th and final wave on insane difficulty is a true achievement. The mode became a series staple, with Gears of War 3 adding in fortifications, light tower defense elements, and even persistent upgrades between matches. It was so popular that even to this day, you can use the term Horde as shorthand for wave defense modes. It's almost as if people really enjoy PvE modes. Weapon skins were first introduced here in Gears of War 2. Gold skins for the Hammerburst and for the Lancer were given out to those who pre-ordered the game. These were the only 2 skins available, and no other skins were added or available for purchase. I reached out to some OG players that are still very active in Gears of War 2. I want to give a big thanks to 2 people in particular. Slotums is letting me use his footage throughout this video. He's an absolute beast, and you should go check out his channel. I left a link in the description below. But the real hero here goes by the name of Mugen828. Mugen has played nearly 16,000 matches in Gears of War 2's execution mode alone. He saw my last video and he answered my call for help to help me get all the details nailed down and to provide a high-level player's perspective. Mugen is so well known in the community that he actually has a signed action figure from Lee Perry, senior gameplay designer over at Epic Games, and Lee Perry was able to get Mugen's name listed into the special thanks section of Gears of War 3's credits. A really important change that came to the design of Gears of War 2's multiplayer was an increase in the maximum number of players from 8 total to 10 per lobby. Bots were also an addition to allow for lobbies to remain balanced. Even if you can't get a lobby these days, you can still experience the multiplayer's offerings against bots. The increased player count had a great impact on the balancing and allowed for a new mode, Wingman, which pits 5 teams against each other in a chaotic 2v2v2v2v2. The assassination mode from Gears of War 1 was renamed to Guardian, and it was changed to allow respawning while the team's leader is alive, and it got rid of that stupid mechanic where your leader needed to pick up a weapon before you could. Another new mode was added called Submission. Essentially, it's just capture the flag, but with a twist that only Gears of War could pull off. In this mode, the flag is an NPC with a gun. To capture them, you have to take them as a human shield and escort them back to your base. All the while, they're struggling against you and hurling insults. Gears of War 2 had an insane number of maps to play on. The game launched with 10 maps, a pretty hefty amount, but Epic Games went wild with all the DLC map packs, adding in 19 maps across 4 map packs. Some maps are returning fan favorites from the original game, but with some slight variations on theme. For example, Gridlock is overgrown with abundant vines and flora, while Canals is now frozen over. Some of the new maps made for Gears of War 2 include map hazards or changing scenery. I'm ashamed at the number of times I was killed by the avalanche. If you survive the avalanche, you'll find a thick fog throughout that severely limits your sightlines. On hail, a deadly razor storm will occasionally rage, forcing players indoors and undercover. New features were also implemented. The new battle cam system allowed for dead players to get a cinematic angle or use a free camera to spectate the battlefield. This ultimately harmed the game as Xbox released the new Xbox experience only a few weeks after Gears of War 2's release. We take it for granted now, but in 2008 is when we were finally able to be in voice chats with all of our friends. You no longer had to rely on in-game voice chat, and you could talk with your friends while they were playing other games. What a simpler time. The battle cam system also had a neat feature allowing you to take a screenshot. The screenshot would be scored based on the amount of blood and violence that filled the image, and a leaderboard system was in place to track the best pictures taken. Movement tech was greatly changed to feel more fluid and responsive. In the original Gears of War, the fastest way to travel was the roadie run. The speed of the roadie run was nerfed for Gears of War 2. Cover taking mechanics were updated to allow players to cancel the animation while sliding into cover. This was the introduction to wall bouncing. Wall bouncing is a really divisive topic among the Gears of War community. Some people think that it is essential and it's unique to Gears of War, while others, myself included, preferred when Gears focused on the tight tactical, strategic, and positional gameplay rather than the button-mashy game that it's become.
What the hell is even that?
Several weapons were changed between games. The long shot was changed so that one shot with an active reload wouldn't immediately down an enemy. Grenades could now also be tagged to walls and to floors to create traps. Weapons now had stopping power, causing a character to be slowed as they took damage. This greatly changes how you consider cover options as you advance. And thankfully, it reduced the ability for people to run up and two-piece you. New weapon-specific executions were also added. If you perform an execution with the pistol in hand, your character will punch the enemy to death. This execution takes a considerable amount of time, and it's often seen by the community as being disrespectful. And the Gnasher shotgun received many divisive changes. The first being a change to the angle that it fires from. In the original game, it would fire from the center of your character toward the center of your screen. But it was changed, so now the pattern fires from the barrel off to the side. Hip fires and blind fire strafing feels very different in Gears of War 2 compared to the other games in the series. The other change was to the pellet pattern, making hard aiming a much more viable tactic than blind fires or pop shots. And one change that pissed off the entire community was a change to the smoke grenade of all things. When the game launched, the smoke grenade's detonation included a concussive blast that would send nearby characters ragdolling, with them being knocked down for almost 3 seconds. The fans unequivocally hated this mechanic, and Cliffy B actually went on to the Gears forums to post a comment about the uproar. His response? Lol. You're retarded. Nah, I'm just playing. He actually gave a pretty tame response, and he said they would test out the game with the mechanic removed, and the mechanic was later removed in the 4th patch that was released on July 7th of 2009. Now, what would a Gears of War game be without the glitches? The team at Epic had a lot more time to iron out the glitches and the netcode before Gears of War 2 was released. Significant improvements were made to the netcode to reduce lag and host advantage. They also implemented better detection of standby usage to prevent people from abusing standby buttons on their modems. But they couldn't keep all of the glitches out. Some glitches made their return. We got to be graced once again by the weapon slide. The fan favorite Kung Fu Flip was there to remind us of the good old days, and we all got to re-experience the pain of dealing with someone crab walking. But of course, there were also new glitches. There was the boom shield glitch, allowing you to use a lancer or a gnasher with the boom shield instead of being limited to only a pistol as intended. You could get infinite ammo. There were 2 glitches that affected the chainsaw. One, you could chainsaw an enemy with any weapon in your hand, or you could also dodge roll out of the chainsaw animation. There was a glitch where you could become invisible. And there was a really fun one specifically for the campaign in the Horde mode, and that was the ability to ride on a blood mount. Now, because the smoke grenade had its annoying concussive knockdown and ragdoll effect, There were glitches specific just to it that have since been patched out. The smoke grenade's blast could be used to get your character out of maps. Scourge's character model in particular could be launched incredibly far by the blast. One map called Security has these deadly lasers that can't be crossed. A well-timed smoke grenade blast could send the character safely through. And there's one other really important glitch that I wasn't even aware of until I started to research for this video, and I have to give a really big thank you to Mugen828 for pointing this one out to me. And once it was pointed out to me, I couldn't unsee it when I was watching Gears of War 2 streams. This glitch was called the lefty swap. The lefty swap glitch allows you to hard aim with the reticle over your left shoulder instead of your right shoulder. This is achieved by canceling the animation for sliding in the cover and timing and aim down sights. As Mugen shared with me, this glitch is actually really common for Gears of War 2 players to use, and it's often seen as an exploit, creating a very big divide among the community. On one side of the argument, this is a common mechanic that's used in most third-person shooters, and it just evens out the use of cover. But many also see it as an exploit since it's not designed into the game that's available to all. If it was designed into the game, it would be a simple button press, not some glitch that you have to do. And because the game is designed around the camera being over your right shoulder, many believe looking over the left shoulder is exploiting the map and combat design.
My name is Cliff Blazinski. The game is Gears of War. Let's check it out.
Gears of War defined the launch of the Xbox 360, and it brought so many of us to the Xbox brand. To follow that up only 2 years later with a complete and feature-rich sequel is an insane accomplishment. Gears of War 2 is a masterpiece. The story is full of thrilling, action-packed sequences. It's an intense, exhausting roller coaster. The amount and effectiveness of the changes that were made to the multiplayer are the stuff of legend. We will never again see a sequel with this level of market improvement, but its underlying message about loss and overcoming grief is what makes it truly special. It's a deeply human story. Just as in life, at certain points, everything is all fun and games.
That's fun, motherfuckers!
But in the blink of an eye, your loved ones, your friends, or even just your hope can be taken away. But you must pick yourself up and push on, with the memory of them in your heart. Cherish the things that you love now while you can, even if it's just those moments of playing online with some people that you've never met in person. Cherish it, because one day they could be gone and you'll have to pick yourself up and keep pushing on.